Good evening, and welcome to a look at Victorian slum winters in courts, coal smoke, and fires, where survival was a chain of tactics in heat, food, work, and community, where the usual choice often backfired and the clever workaround kept you going. In these rooms, lighting a fire could quietly make the night more dangerous. If you enjoy this channel, tap like and subscribe only if it feels right. It helps others find gentle history. It helps keep this corner of the internet cozy. And history is a draft that finds every gap. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Night owls and early birds both welcome, and keep it short so your eyes can rest. Unclench your jaw and let your shoulders drop. Hear the slow tick of the clock. Breathe steady and rest a hand by the warm mug on your nightstand. Now, let's step quietly into the winter streets. The hiss of a gas lamp in freezing air marks a narrow lane. Weak gaslight pools on the road, leaving doorways in shadow. Gas ran at low pressure on cold nights, so the flame sat small, and the court beyond stayed dim. Courts like this sit behind the main street, built tight for cheap rent. Boots whisper on frost as steps pick a careful line. Breath hangs for a blink, then thins away. Slick cobbles wait under a powder of ice. Nails in the soles bite where they can, and patched leather tries not to soak through. A slip can mean a day lost at work and pay lost with it. A ground floor window shows a one-room home close to the street. Low embers settle in the grate, a dull red with a thin rim of blue. A twist of newspaper plugs a crack in the frame, and a slow clock tick rides the air from somewhere up the court. A family sits in the shape of work and rest. One pair of hands mends a sleeve by the fire. The thread is saved from older clothes. Another figure coughs softly without moving. Two small bodies share blankets on a single mattress, their feet tucked to keep warmth from leaking. The smell of coal smoke mixes with damp plaster, half home, half outside. Banked cinders from last night keep the embers alive, and a tin kettle waits for a better flame. The rent goes to an agent on Saturday night, whether the week was kind or not. Winter here runs on small choices, each one a trade. Spend a halfpence on coal or bread, open the door to sweep ash or keep the draft out, share heat in one room or spread out and shiver. Breathing stays slow, so the heat in the body lasts. The city is a kettle that never quite boils in the cold. A latch sticks where the wood has swollen, and the noise of the lane softens as the gap opens. Ease through the door and into the first cold room. A one-room tenement holds a grate, a bed, and a cracked window at sundown. The room sits off a shared landing in a stacked brick block. The floor is bare boards with gaps between planks. A draft slides under the door and chills ankles. Damp plaster gives a cold smell, with coal smoke behind it. Drafts didn't wait for an invitation. Rag-stuffed window and door gaps mark the first defense. Your breath clouds briefly near the dim grate. A floorboard complains, and then falls quiet. Landlords pinned up rules about hearth use in houses like this. Some rooms had no private grate at all, only a shared range downstairs. In some tenements, the keeper locked the kitchen fire after hours. In common lodging houses, you paid for a turn at the fire and were told when to stop. Many set hours for the grate, banned live coals after curfew, and warned against hanging damp clothes over the fire. Shared chimneys meant smoke backed up fast if a flue clogged. Fines followed if you made trouble. A warmed brick sits wrapped in cloth at the foot of the bed, saved from the day's embers. Two bodies share the narrow mattress, caps on, blankets layered, shoulders touching. A child might tuck crosswise at the end to catch heat off legs. Because the walls were thin and wet, therefore any fire lost heat fast. Heating this room is like trying to warm a tent with a candle. People stopped trying to heat space and started heating places where bodies touched. The brick takes the bite from icy sheets, and hands find the warm patch in the night. Coats and shawls serve as extra covers, and socks stay on till morning. The bed becomes the heater, not the room. Bodies do the work, and the tight bundle holds what warmth there is. Nighttime house fires and smoke suffocation are known threats in courts like this. Hearths get banked with ash so a glow can last till morning. That trick cuts the chance of waking to a cold grate, but it raises other risks. Bedding too near a spark can catch while people sleep. Stale smoke can pool under a low ceiling if the flue draws badly. Chimneys in poor courts might go unswept for months, so soot can ignite and flare up the stack. Windows plugged with rags keep out the sting, yet they also keep out air that clears fumes, so some tenants crack the frame or prop the door an inch after hearing of families found faint. Even with care, an ember needs feeding. To keep even a small glow alive, you need something to burn next. Step back into the lane to find the fuel that feeds those embers. A dust heap at the edge of the court is the morning stop. Boys, girls, and tired mothers scratch through cold ash for cinders and small wood chips. Fingers sting in the frost, and soot grit coats the fingertips. The dust yard next door runs cinder sifting, turning last night's ash into piles that can be picked over for fuel, the air dull and cold. A small household grate waits behind a damp hearth. A coal sack or a dented coal scuttle holds the day's hope. Never quite enough. The options line up in plain view. There are coal sacks from a dealer, cheaper coke from the gasworks, scavenged cinders from the dust yard, and scrap wood from crates. None of it promises a blaze, only time. A coal cart rolls in by noon. You hear cartwheels bump over cobbles. The coal merchant's scales hang at the side, iron pans steady as he measures sacks. A few pay for a full sack and carry it inside, but many hand over a penny and buy a scoop, or even a few lumps, by the handful, because coal cost cash up front. Therefore, families burned scraps and damp cinders. Coke gives a steady, longer heat when the draft is good, but it costs more and needs the fire set right. Coal burns hotter and lights easier, but it eats the purse faster. Cinders burn weak and smoky, and the smoke sits low in the room, stinging eyes and dulling the chest. Worse, a starved fire in a tight room can sour the air with carbon monoxide, so headaches and swoons were not rare. It's like living on phone battery saver, rationing every minute. The fire never got the memo about staying on. Each choice had a price. Coke stretched the hours but took more coins. Coal pushed quick warmth, then disappeared, leaving a cold grate by evening. Cinders smoked and choked, blackening the mantle and the lungs, and scrap wood flared fast, then quit. You see black dust ground into a mittened palm. A careful hand banked a fire with a little coke or dry cinders, trying to keep a dull glow under a gray crust. A coal scuttle nudges the fender, while a kettle sits close, the metal warm and singing faintly. A family that could plan a fire in a small grate knew the trick of low and slow heat. A lid set firm, and a dinner that cooked as the room warmed. The clever thought was simple. The smartest heat was heat you could eat. Carry the scant fuel back and set a pot so the warmth does the cooking too. A tin pot sits on the grate, its lid clicking as the fire breathes. Potatoes and scraps roll in a thin broth that barely covers them. Steam smells meaty, and a brief wash of heat touches your face. A ladle scrapes the pot's thin bottom, metal on metal, then pauses to chase one last bit of carrot. The cook keeps the door pulled close to hold the warmth, though smoke creeps through the cracks. Coal is dear, so the flames stay small. Ash is shaken and saved, then pressed with cinders to make the burn last. A hot potato in paper travels from stall to home like a hand warmer you could eat. Skin splits, starch steams, and the paper turns greasy. An eel pie stall lifts a lid and lets out a puff that smells of pepper and river fish. The man cuts narrow slices and nods toward a line already forming. A vendor calls, his voice fogged by cold, and the words fall into the street like pebbles. Bread and dripping waits for those with a penny to spare. A kettle rattles on the hob for strong tea, the tannin bite promised before the water even boils. Cheap fillings do two jobs if you plan them right. Potatoes fill corners, and they are hot, so a child holds one in a pocket for the walk back. Tea warms the hands and quiets a stomach, though it gives little food. Bread and dripping tastes richer than it feeds. Eel pie slices ride home in a paper boat, and the gravy gets poured into the common pot to thicken broth. Families build meals from what can be carried and what can be coaxed from the grate. The point is warmth as much as calories. A mission soup line curves along a wet wall, coats dark with soot. Hands cup tin mugs as breath lifts in the cold. A dinner ticket passes from one cracked glove to a clerk's dry fingers, and a ladle drops barley and onion into the waiting metal. Mothers lift the mugs to small faces first. Men hang back and try not to cough. The soup is thin but hot, and a second dip means a stamp on the card. They cooked when they could, because cooking added heat, therefore stews doubled as heater and meal. Think 2 for 1, dinner and space heater in the same pot. Seasoning was hope. A pinch meant the broth might taste like something remembered. Tea and bread stretched days that had no spare coins. Soup queues cost time and energy, and the shuffle drained legs already tired from day work, but those lines kept bodies going. Malnutrition crept in on quiet feet. Fatigue lingered in the morning and never left. Fainting risk rose in workshops, in schools, and in stairwells, and people learned to sit quick when the room tilted. Strong tea masked hunger long enough to finish a shift, and then the cycle began again, with scraps and stew and steam on cold cheeks. Food and fire got them through the worst hours, but not the whole winter. When the pot cooled and the grate thinned to ash, bodies had to take over. Cloth had to trap what warmth the food had sparked. From here, the next defense was needle and wool, with warmth won by repairs and layers. Hands pull a needle through a sock under a dim lamp. A child wraps a shawl twice, tucking the end tight. The wool is damp and itches. A cold seam presses against the wrist as the thread is drawn home. The room smells of warm but damp wool by the embers. A muffler lies on a chair, ready for the morning. Patched boots wait by the door, their leather thin and tired. Quick fixes stack up like small bets. Newspaper lines the chest and back, crackling when you move. Straw goes into clogs or the toes of those patched boots, soft at first, then sharp. Hems are pinned to stop drafts, so tight you feel a pin scratch as a seam is tightened. 2 people might share one good coat at night, draped over both bodies on a pallet. A muffler becomes a pillow for 1 hour, then a face cover for the next. None of it looks smart, but it keeps the edge off. The pawn shop sits in the routine like a clock. The pawnbroker knows the shawl, knows the muffler, knows the weight of those boots. The custom is steady. Winter wear is redeemed on payday, worn out into the cold, then pawned again when coins run thin. Tickets live in a tin or a teacup on the mantel. Small fees nibble at wages. People call it the pawn shop weekly redemption custom, and it feels normal until a bad week pushes the shawl across the counter for longer than planned. Because boots leaked for days, therefore socks stayed wet and skin split. It's like relying on paper umbrellas in a hailstorm. Fashion took a number and waited. Dry layers meant fewer chilblains and fewer missed shifts. Neglect brought chilblains and infection risk from persistent damp, which turned a numb toe into a sore and sometimes into a doctor's bill that no one could pay. The math was plain. Dry meant you could walk to work. Wet meant you limped and lost time. Small habits tried to stay ahead of the cold. Socks were turned inside out near the stove for an hour, then rotated with the least wet pair. Children wore 2 thin layers instead of 1 thick layer, easier to dry on a chair. A shawl went over the head in bed, muffling breath into a little warm pocket. Soap was rationed to protect sore hands. Even the way a muffler was wound mattered, covering the mouth to warm the air before it hit the lungs. The clock ticked in the corner, steady and slow. The cold does not wait. Work calls in the dark morning. Step into the street where wages depend on weather and luck. Take a slow breath in. Let it out a little longer. Take another slow breath. Let it out longer again. Take a third breath in. Let the exhale trail a little more. Hear the clock's steady tick between breaths. Thin fires sat in small grates. Coals were rationed and coaxed. Ash was saved and sifted for one more glow. A damp wall kept the chill close, and smoke marked the ceiling in a faint line. Cheap stews did the extra miles. 2-for-1 ladles stretched a single coin into a fuller pot. A cellar's pot bubbled, and a jug came home heavy and warm. Steam met cold air at the door and drifted low. Patched layers went on in order. Coats were repaired where the elbows rubbed thin. A scarf hid a frayed collar. Seams pulled, then held, and the fabric softened with wear. Small routines held their shape. A hand checked the fire. A lid settled on the pot. A stitch ran straight. Because small habits stacked, therefore each winter day linked to the next. It was not grand, but it worked. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Let the tongue rest easy. Feel the next breath come gentle. Let the exhale take a little longer. Let a small quiet sit in the space that follows. Thin fires, 2-for-1 stews, and patched layers kept life moving inch by inch. The details were many, but each one was simple. That is how people found a way through, with steady steps and modest tools. Morning gathers outside. Boots start to scuff the stones. The hiring corner draws a slow crowd, and breath clouds the air. Let your last exhale carry you into the cold queue for work. A crowd gathers outside the dock gates before dawn. Boots crunch on frost. Breath stings the throat. A handcart bumps past, wheels knocking on the stones, while gulls scrape the air. The call-on starts when the foreman steps out and points, and a few men get a nod for a shift. The casual queue runs along the railings, caps low. A couple bring their own hooks or rope belts to look ready. Others wait and stamp, hands like blocks of wood. Men who catch work haul sacks, shift timber, and sling mooring ropes. Others turn costermonger, pushing a barrow of apples or hot chestnuts down wet lanes. A girl sells matches at corners, and an old man picks rags from gutters, while a crossing sweeper clears slush for a coin. See frost feather along iron rails by the yard. Barrows can be rented by the day, and the rent bites first. Match sellers often buy on credit in penny bundles. Rag pickers sell to a marine store dealer and hope the scale leans fair. Winter cuts the working day to a small window. Fingers go numb, knots slow, and even counting coins takes time. Here a boot slip, then steady. Because daylight shrank and streets iced, therefore pay fell and accidents rose. A fall off a slick plank means a day gone, maybe a week. No pay and a bruise that stiffens. Frozen ropes burn like dry nettles. Piecework drags when the barge is late, or when cranes freeze and crews fiddle to keep them moving. Freezes shut river stairs and turn alleys into slides, and the queue at the gate grows longer. It feels like your gig app throttles you just when bills hit. The weather never signed a labor contract. People answered by stacking tasks, sharing tools, and guarding the best corners. A man skipped from the dock queue to hauling a neighbor's handcart, then back to sweep a crossing when a parish official walked by. A costermonger lent a barrow board to a match seller, and they split the pitch by hours. Households pooled shillings for coal and took turns minding a stall, warm tea passing between hands. A mother patched sacks at night and sent a boy to shout for a baker in the morning. A couple of mates shared a shovel and took odd jobs clearing yard drains, then swapped to carry baskets for a shop when the bell rang. The air made its own rules. Coal smoke sagged in the courts and river fog rolled through cranes. Damp cloth chilled the chest and coughs nagged at every corner. Each breath had weight, as if the day charged a toll. We follow the chill into the fog, where breathing becomes the main task. Street lamps blur in a yellow fog. A scarf edge warms your lips as you breathe. Tiny soot flecks land on the scarf fringe, and the road feels close. Cheap coal in 100 chimneys feeds the yellow cloud. Factory stacks join it, and families shake ash and slack into small hearths to make fuel last. Railways and barges bring soft coal by the ton, and the city burns it day and night. The smoke tastes bitter on the tongue. Because chimneys burned cheap fuel, therefore smoke settled low and choked streets. It's like running a charcoal grill in a closet. Fresh air was mostly an idea. Wet walls and back-to-backs keep rooms clammy. Cuffs feel heavy with damp by noon, and window panes bead and drip. Landlords patch slowly, so mortar stays wet and roofs leak under sleet. Crowded rooms share breath, so chests rattle, and winter fevers ride the air. Cold snaps raise the risk of bronchitis and pneumonia. Public baths and washhouses give steam and soap to scrape off grit and warm the bones. Tokens make an hour affordable, and a copper tub steadies the shiver. A charity dispensary hands out a spoon of cough mixture, a paper of powders, and a short word on rest. A flannel chest cloth is pinned under a shirt to keep a cough from biting. Some households lay a mustard plaster near the grate and hope the heat draws out the ache. Flannel wraps, hot tea, and a quiet hour of sleep do the daily work when medicine runs thin. Windows are cracked for a minute, then stuffed again with rag to keep heat in. A little camphor rub or goose grease on a child's chest makes the air feel kinder for a time. The wheeze softens, and the clock tick finds a steady pace. A lodging house counter waits under gaslight at the end of the street. A few coins can buy a bed in a crowded room. Less money means a hard bench in a ward, or the workhouse door for a night's shelter. You hear a cough dampened into cloth as the line inches forward. Turn the corner to a lodging house sign and the clink of small coins. A narrow entry holds a counter and a rough board. See chalk tallies on a rough board, each line a night. Hear coins rattle in a shallow tray. Stale soap and breath mingle in the air as feet climb. The boards strain under a crowded landing, and the door pushes back against a drift of bodies. A price list chalked near the latch offers 3 paths. A 4-penny bed buys a shared room and a strip of mattress. Many were coffin beds, long and tight, with a short sideboard that boxed you in. A penny, sit-up bench, buys only a place on a hard plank under a weak fire. The 3rd path is out the door, toward the workhouse casual ward. House rules cover the walls and the staff's pockets. Curfew comes early, and latecomers sleep nowhere. Searches catch knives and liquor at the threshold. Lice checks meet you at entry, fingers quick along collars and hair. The keeper tries to hold off vermin, yet a full house is hard to police. The casual ward starts with a ticket. A man might beg one from a relieving officer or a police station, then join a queue in the cold. The ward checks clothes for dirt and bugs, asks for names, and fixes a bed number. A hard shelf or a bare cot waits, and the bath can be chilly. Stone breaking sits on the morning side of the deal. The ticket opens the door, but the hammer opens the street. Because rules demanded labor and early exit, therefore rest was short and costly. Think of a red-eye flight where you also have to mop the plane. Hospitality came with small print. The lodging house sells a degree of safety, yet it is a mixed bargain. A wall and a bolt beat the pavement on a wet night. Lice, theft, and contagion risk still slip through gaps in habit and luck. Blankets carry eggs. Pockets get lighter in the dark. A cough at one end of the room breeds 3 more by week's end. Some refused the bed and chased heat in pubs instead, nursing one drink till closing to sit by a coal grate, then walking till dawn to keep the blood moving. Tiny choices ruled the bill. 4pence on a coffin bed, or 1 penny on a seat and 3 on bread. A ticket for the ward, or a night in a doorway and a clear head for work. A warm mug now, or a pawnbroker's loan tomorrow. The winter economy bent around these rooms. Beds ate coins, then the week's tools went to the shop to recover rent and fuel. Neighbors made the loop softer. A shawl passed along. A kettle shared its steam. A borrowed copper filled a gap until Saturday wages returned. A chalk mark at the counter closed each day's sum. The keeper wiped the board at noon and started again. The house kept bodies stacked and fires lit, and the streets took back whoever fell short. Let the door swing closed and follow a shawl to the pawnbroker's light. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Let it out and pause at the bottom. Take another deep breath, easy and full. Let it out and pause again at the bottom. Just a quiet beat. Notice the warm stripe where blanket meets skin. Hear a faint household hum settling. Let your eyes rest on one small shape in the room. Let it be enough for now. Coal smoke once hung low over courts and stairs. Air felt thick inside narrow rooms, and a fire could be stingy. Lodging houses and shelters kept strict hours, early lights out and early rise. Small winds stacked up when they could. A kettle barely simmering. A rag pressed into a door crack. A sock Darned one more time, your blanket holds steady heat. Your roof keeps the weather out. Let a simple thank you sit in your chest. No measuring, no math. Just a quiet nod to the warmth at hand. Loosen the fingers. Let the shoulders drop a little. Let the tongue rest from the roof of the mouth. Let the jaw be easy. Give the pause a small space before the next breath finds you. Low fires needed patience, and long rules demanded care. Because money was tight, therefore every habit mattered. Little choices carried weight. Think of it like low power mode. Every setting nudged to save a little. A pawn ticket sits folded in a pocket. A tallyman's knock tests the door in the dim. A neighbor shares what they can. Not much, but honest and warm. Ease back to the street and into the small math of survival. A pawnbroker's pledge counter takes a worn shawl without surprise. A clerk weighs it, the metal scale clicks, and a neat number gets inked on a pawn ticket. Cold glass sits between clerk and customer, bright with breath on one side. The shawl becomes a pledge, not a keepsake. A ledger shows the name, the item, the advance, and the fee. Rows of numbered tags hang on pegs like an orderly winter orchard, each one a small story waiting. A small bell tinkles as the door closes, and the customer steps back to the street with a thin fold of coins. A Friday wage brings a rush to redeem what keeps a family warm. A shawl or a quilt comes home for the weekend, then goes back on Monday to stretch the bread money. A kettle, a tool. Even boots might rotate through that glass. The rhythm is steady, like a clock that never stops. A tallyman walks the courts and stairwells with a notebook. He calls for installments on a sewing machine. A coat bought on credit. A bed paid in shillings. A chandler's shop keeps a quiet tick for candles, soap, and tea. Small sums add up quickly, and they keep food and fuel from running out. Because income was weekly, but needs were daily, therefore pawn cycles bridged the gap. It's like floating on a credit card minimum, never catching up. Hope was the only item not on pawn. A neighbor's pot simmers for more than one doorstep. A mother watches 2 extra infants, while a widow takes a charwoman's shift. A few coins pass quietly for coal, or a loaf goes half and half. Work songs carry from the pub, and sober hymns from chapel teas. The talk is practical, the kindness plain. An interest slip explains the cost of that short bridge. A pawn ticket buys time, but fees pull at the same purse that must cover rent. Eviction hangs over a house when arrears grow, and debt slides into an interest trap when a pledge stays too long. The shop does not forgive, and the tallyman does not forget. A quieter fact sits under it all. Community softens the edges, and people share what they can. The system still takes its cut, and survival beats comfort most weeks. Winter craft lives in small moves. Redeem, repawn, share stew. Keep a child warm for the night. A slow breath brings you back to your own quiet. The old counter, the bell, the pegs can rest now. Let the old street dim, and feel your own room settle around you. The clock beside you keeps a steady tick. The room is quiet. The air feels still, maybe a touch cool near the window. Fabric brushes your skin, warm and familiar. Those older streets we visited step back, like a picture sliding into its frame. Breathe easy as the present gathers around you. One clear thought lingers. Survival in those winters was not one grand trick. It was a stack of small habits, like coins dropped into a jar. A saved cinder to start the morning fire. A second pair of socks pulled over thin heels. a pot stretched with peelings and a bone to make a broth. A neighbor called in to share the heat while mending. These were taught in kitchens and yards. What worked got copied. What failed was dropped. Thank you for spending this quiet stretch here. If you enjoy winding down in this corner, feel free to like and subscribe, only if it helps you rest easy. No rush. Take what you need, leave the rest. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is when this found you. It is calming to see the hour marks from so many places. Keep it simple if you like, just a place name and the hour. I read them with a quiet smile. Let the old city sleep now, and let your mind drift, slow and light, toward whatever dream wants to arrive. Good night. Let this last word settle into the clock's steady tick and your own easy breathing.